The Final Lie, Cleopatra's Secret Crypt and the Curse She Set on Caesar's Bloodline. They say Cleopatra died by her own hand, that on August 12, 30 BC, she pressed a venomous asp to her breast and slipped quietly into death, a tragic end to a legendary queen. But what if I told you that's exactly what she wanted you to believe? What if her final act wasn't suicide at all, but the opening move in a game of revenge that would haunt Rome for generations? What if, in those last hours before Octavian's soldiers broke down her door, Cleopatra didn't just end her life, she weaponized her death? Because here's what they don't teach you in history class. Cleopatra's body was never independently verified. Her tomb has never been found. And Octavian, the man who would become Caesar Augustus, the founder of the Roman Empire, spent the rest of his life obsessively searching for something. Not gold, not treasure, but a secret so dangerous that its discovery could have destroyed everything he'd built. This is the story of the Final Lie, a final political weapon buried in a crypt designed never to be found, a lie so perfect that it turned Cleopatra's defeat into her greatest victory. This is the story of how Cleopatra's last act wasn't ending her bloodline, but ensuring Caesar's would never escape her shadow. August 30 BC. Alexandria is burning. Mark Antony is dead. Cleopatra is a prisoner in her own palace, guarded by Octavian's men. The queen who once commanded the wealth of Egypt, who seduced Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, who nearly brought Rome to its knees, she's been reduced to a captive waiting for her victor to decide her fate. But here's where the official story starts to crack. According to Plutarch, Cleopatra asked Octavian for one final favor, to be buried beside Mark Antony. Octavian, in a rare moment of what historians call magnanimity, agreed. She was found dead hours later. The asp, the dramatic exit, the legend was born. But let's think about this critically for a moment. We're talking about Cleopatra, a woman who spoke 9 languages, who commanded navies, who negotiated with the most powerful men in the world and came out on top, until she didn't. Does it make sense that her final move was just giving up? Or was the suicide theater a performance designed to buy her the most precious commodity in the world, time to finish something? Here's what we know for certain. Cleopatra's burial site has never been found. Not in 2,000 years, not by the Romans who had every reason to locate it, not by Napoleon's expedition, not by modern archaeologists with ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging. It's as if the tomb was designed to vanish. And maybe that's because it was. Think about the engineering genius of ancient Egypt. These were the people who built the pyramids, who created false chambers and hidden passages to protect their dead. Cleopatra would have had access to the greatest architects and engineers in the Mediterranean.
What if she commissioned them to build something unprecedented? Not a monument, not a treasure house, but a crypt that would self-destruct. A burial chamber rigged to collapse, to flood, to erase itself from existence once she was laid to rest. A tomb that would take its secrets to oblivion. But why? Why go to such extraordinary lengths? Because she wasn't just hiding a body, she was hiding a weapon. In the ancient world, tombs weren't just graves, they were statements of power. They were political manifestos carved in stone. And Cleopatra, in her final hours, had the opportunity to make one last statement, one that Octavian could never refute, never disprove, never escape. Hypothetically speaking, what if inside that undiscoverable crypt, Cleopatra left something, an artifact, a document, a declaration carved in stone or written on papyrus preserved in sealed jars, something that challenged the very foundation of Octavian's claim to power, something that said, Caesar's true heir still lives. Let's talk about legitimacy, because in 30 BC, that's all that mattered. Octavian's entire claim to power rested on one fact. He was Julius Caesar's adopted son and chosen heir. Not by blood. Caesar's only biological son was Caesarion, his child with Cleopatra, but by will, by legal document, by Caesar's word, which meant Octavian's power was only as strong as people's belief in that document, in that choice, in Caesar's judgment. And Cleopatra knew that. She knew that legitimacy is fragile, that it can be questioned, undermined, destroyed. So here's the hypothesis, the final lie. What if Cleopatra, in those last hours, created a counter-narrative? What if she commissioned a document, a will, a declaration, a testimony, that named Caesarion as Caesar's true and intended heir? What if she had it witnessed, sealed, preserved and hidden in that crypt, along with symbolic proof of Caesar's paternity. Maybe a signet ring Caesar gave her. Maybe a private letter in his own hand acknowledging his son. Maybe even genetic evidence preserved in a way the ancients understood, but we've lost. A lock of Caesar's hair, a blood-stained cloth, something that could be tested, verified, challenged. It doesn't even have to be real. That's the genius of it. It just has to be unfindable. Because a lie you can't disprove is more powerful than any truth. It's a splinter you can't remove, a doubt you can't silence. Imagine you're Octavian. You've just conquered Egypt. You've executed Caesarion, the only person who could challenge your claim. You've won. And then rumors start spreading. Whispers in the markets. Stories told by Egyptian priests who claim to have witnessed Cleopatra's final testimony. Tales of a hidden document that proves you're a fraud. You can kill the people spreading the rumors, but you can't kill the rumor itself, because the document might actually exist, and if it does, it's in a tomb you can't find, protected by Egyptian magic and engineering you don't understand.
Waiting. Patient. Immortal. That's not a curse in the supernatural sense. That's psychological warfare of the highest order. But there's another layer to this, something even more sinister. The Romans believed in curses, truly believed. They wore amulets to ward off the evil eye. They performed rituals to appease the dead. They understood that words have power, especially the dying words of a queen. What if Cleopatra didn't just leave a document? What if she performed a ritual? A binding curse, witnessed by priests, invoking the gods of Egypt against Caesar's bloodline. What if she declared that every heir of Augustus would suffer, that the Julio-Claudian dynasty would tear itself apart in madness and blood? You might roll your eyes at ancient superstition, but consider this. The Julio-Claudian dynasty did destroy itself. Augustus's grandsons died young under mysterious circumstances. His daughter Julia was exiled for adultery. Tiberius became a paranoid recluse. Caligula went insane. Claudius was poisoned. Nero committed suicide. The bloodline of Caesar, the one Octavian fought so hard to legitimize, ended in chaos within a century. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe Cleopatra understood something profound, that belief creates reality, that a curse only needs to be believed to work, and that by hiding her final testament in an undiscoverable tomb, she ensured it would be believed forever. Because here's the thing about a secret you can never verify. It has infinite power. It can be anything, everything. It grows in the darkness of uncertainty. And Octavian knew it. The historical record shows us something fascinating, something that doesn't quite make sense unless you understand what Octavian was really afraid of. After Cleopatra's death, Augustus, as Octavian now called himself, became obsessed with controlling her narrative. He commissioned poets to write about her, historians to document her downfall, artists to depict her death. He needed the world to see Cleopatra as a defeated enemy, a cautionary tale, a footnote in Roman greatness. But at the same time, he was searching desperately. Roman records show multiple expeditions into the deserts around Alexandria, engineering projects to drain underground chambers, interrogations of Egyptian priests, bribes, threats, torture. What was he looking for? The official story says treasure, that Cleopatra had hidden vast wealth and Augustus wanted it to pay his soldiers. That makes sense on the surface, but Augustus had just conquered the richest kingdom in the Mediterranean. He had Egypt's entire treasury. Why risk political instability by terrorizing priests and tearing apart sacred sites for a few more gold coins? Unless it wasn't about gold. Unless it was about something far more valuable. Certainty. He needed to find that tomb. He needed to see Cleopatra's body with his own eyes. He needed to verify that whatever she'd hidden had been destroyed or never existed in the first place. But he never found it. And that failure, that one thing the most powerful man in the world couldn't achieve, it haunted him. Augustus lived for another 40 years after Cleopatra's death. He transformed Rome from a republic to an empire. He built monuments that still stand today. He created the Pax Romana, centuries of relative peace. By any measure, he won. But he never stopped looking for that tomb. In his personal correspondence, fragments preserved in various sources, there are references to the Egyptian matter, to unfinished business, to concerns about legitimacy questions that his advisors couldn't quite explain. Late in his life, he allegedly kept a small Egyptian amulet with him at all times, a protective charm against curses. Why would the most rational, calculating political mind of his generation, a man who rejected superstition and promoted Roman civic religion, why would he carry a curse amulet? Because he believed. Somewhere in his brilliant, paranoid mind, he believed that Cleopatra had won after all. And here's the evidence that something genuinely strange was happening. The Julio-Claudian obsession with Cleopatra didn't end with Augustus. Tiberius, his successor, banned Egyptian cults in Rome. Caligula was fascinated with her and allegedly tried to have her tomb located using methods his predecessors hadn't tried. Nero considered himself a reincarnation of both Alexander the Great and Mark Antony. He even grew his hair long in the Egyptian style and performed private rituals honoring Cleopatra and Antony's spirits. 4 generations of Roman emperors, all consumed by the ghost of a dead Egyptian queen, all trying to either find her tomb, appease her spirit, or claim her legacy. That's not normal. That's a dynasty trapped in psychological warfare with a corpse, or with the idea of a corpse, because that might be the most brilliant part of Cleopatra's final lie. She understood that her absence would be more powerful than her presence. A body can be desecrated, mocked, paraded through streets, forgotten. But a missing body? A hidden tomb? A curse that might exist in a crypt that might be real? That lives forever. Let me take you to a specific moment, a moment that, when you really think about it, reveals everything. It's 29 BC, 1 year after Cleopatra's death. Augustus is celebrating his triple triumph in Rome, his victories in Illyricum, at Actium, and the conquest of Egypt. The streets are packed, gold flows, prisoners march in chains. Cleopatra's children are displayed, the twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, and young Ptolemy Philadelphus. But not Caesarion. He's already dead, executed on Augustus's orders. During the triumph, an effigy of Cleopatra is paraded through the streets, not her body, an effigy, a statue showing her death by asp. The Romans cheer. The message is clear. The Serpent Queen is dead, Rome has won, the story is over. But here's what's strange. After the triumph, Augustus gives a speech. In it, he says something odd. He declares that Cleopatra died as she lived, in deception. Deception. Not defeat. Deception. What did he mean? Was he saying her suicide was fake? Was he hinting that she'd tricked him somehow? The historians who recorded this never explain. They just note that Augustus seemed troubled and cut the speech short. Then he did something unprecedented. He sealed Cleopatra's palace. Not looted it, sealed it. Posted guards, forbade entry. For 3 years, that palace remained untouched, while the rest of Alexandria was plundered and integrated into Rome. What was he protecting? Or what was he afraid someone would find? The palace was eventually torn down, completely demolished, every stone removed. The site was filled in and paved over. It's now somewhere under modern Alexandria, buried under 30 feet of rubble and 2,000 years of construction. But before it was destroyed, Augustus had it searched, room by room, wall by wall, looking for something. He never said what, but we know he didn't find it, because the searching never stopped. Here's where we need to talk about the psychology of power, because that's what this is really about. Augustus built an empire that lasted 500 years. His political genius is studied to this day. But he had one weakness: legitimacy. He wasn't Caesar's son by blood. He wasn't chosen by the Senate. He wasn't elected by the people. He was Caesar's grandnephew who got lucky with an adoption and clever timing. Every move he made as emperor was designed to reinforce his legitimacy. The name Augustus, meaning revered one. The title Princeps, meaning first citizen, not king. The careful propaganda showing him as Rome's savior, not its conqueror. But all of that could be undermined by one simple fact. Caesar had a biological son, and Augustus had him killed. That's murder. Fratricide by proxy. The elimination of a rival who by blood had a better claim. Augustus spent 40 years trying to make Rome forget Caesarion existed. He erased him from monuments, banned his name from official records, created a mythology where Caesar's only true heir was Augustus himself. And then Cleopatra, even in death, threatened all of it. Because what if she left proof?
What if she left testimony from witnesses who saw Caesar with his son? What if she left documents showing Caesar's intentions? What if she left anything that made people question Augustus's story? The genius of hiding it in an undiscoverable tomb is that Augustus could never prove it didn't exist. He could never close that chapter. He could never be certain. And uncertainty is poison to power. So Cleopatra in her final act didn't defeat Rome militarily. She didn't need to. She defeated them psychologically. She planted a seed of doubt that would grow in darkness for generations. She made herself immortal by making herself unfindable. She turned her tomb into a question mark that would hang over the Roman Empire like a sword. Now let's talk about modern searches.
Because they reveal just how deep this mystery goes. In 2005, archaeologist Zahi Hawass announced he was mounting an expedition to find Cleopatra's tomb. He had a theory. The tomb was at Taposiris Magna, a temple site west of Alexandria. They found coins with Cleopatra's face, foundation deposits, evidence of royal burials. They never found the tomb. In 2019, a team used satellite imaging to survey sites around Alexandria. They identified dozens of potential locations, underground voids that could be burial chambers. They explored several. None contained Cleopatra. In 2022, a researcher proposed that the tomb might be underwater, submerged when parts of ancient Alexandria sank into the Mediterranean. Diving teams explored the site. Nothing. It's been 2,000 years. We have technology the Romans couldn't dream of. We can see through solid rock. We can map underground structures from space. We can recover DNA from 1,000-year-old bones. And we still can't find her. At some point, you have to ask, is this bad luck or by design? What if Cleopatra's engineers did something we can't even imagine? What if the tomb really was built to self-destruct, to flood with seawater, to collapse into honeycomb limestone caverns that would erase all evidence? What if she's not in a tomb at all? What if she was cremated and her ashes scattered, while the tomb everyone searches for is an elaborate decoy? Or, and this is the most chilling possibility, what if she is exactly where she said she'd be, buried beside Mark Antony in a chamber that exists in a quantum state of reality, there and not there, waiting to be found by the one person who would understand her final message, the heir she never got to raise? Let me leave you with this. In the British Museum, there's an artifact that doesn't get much attention. It's a small clay tablet, dated to approximately 25 BC. It's written in Demotic Egyptian, the common script of the time, and it contains what appears to be a fragment of a funerary spell. The spell is incomplete, broken off, but the visible portion reads, "The Serpent Queen sleeps with truth beneath her tongue, her son's name written in the stars. The false Caesar will know fear when the earth opens," and then it breaks off. No one knows where this tablet came from. It was purchased in a Cairo market in the 1890s. It has no provenance. It could be authentic, it could be a forgery. The British Museum won't commit either way. But someone made it. Someone wrote those words. And someone, maybe Augustus himself, made sure it was broken before the spell could be completed. Because that's the thing about Cleopatra's final lie. We don't know if it's a lie at all. We don't know what's in that tomb. We don't know if the tomb even exists. We don't know if there's a curse, a document, a declaration, or just empty stone. All we know is that Cleopatra understood something fundamental about power. Mystery is stronger than certainty. Absence is more haunting than presence.
And a question that can never be answered will torture brilliant minds far longer than any answer ever could. She died on her terms, in her palace, surrounded by her symbols of power. And she made sure that her death would be the beginning of a story, not the end. Augustus won the war, but Cleopatra won history, because we're still talking about her, still searching for her, still wondering what secrets she took to that hidden place. And as long as we're wondering, as long as that tomb remains undiscovered, her final lie continues. The curse isn't magic, it's doubt. And it worked. Sleep well, Caesar. The Serpent Queen is still watching.